Not everyone who stands against you will raise their voice. Sometimes the most dangerous thing walks in through excessive kindness. A smile that lasts a little longer than usual. A gentle question that leaves a heavy echo in the air. And you know it, not with logic, but with a deeper pulse where the soul hears the shift long before the ears catch the sound. A tiny deviation, yet enough to make you feel a new layer of air settling over the room. You stand there among familiar faces, yet it feels as if you are observing them from somewhere else. Higher, quieter, and clearer. No one behaves crudely. No one shows obvious hostility. There is no scene you can point to and say, "See, this is what I feel." But truth does not need physical evidence to exist. It only needs a soul awake enough to recognize it. Someone checks on you with a voice too sweet, as if rehearsed in front of a mirror. Another glances at you, then looks away quicker than what feels natural. Someone smiles at you, but in their eyes there is something like they are hiding a small object up their sleeve. Everything looks normal, yet when gathered, they form a melody out of rhythm. And you hear that discord clearly because you are someone who has been hurt deeply enough to never ignore the smallest signals again. You say nothing, you ask nothing. You simply stand there, breathing light and slow, letting your soul open as if welcoming a strange breeze. You feel the silence between the words louder than the words. You feel the intent behind the concern. You feel the slight tension in their bodies when they stand near you. And you know this intuition did not appear by chance. It is what life has forged in you through the times you trusted the wrong people, through the times you ignored your first instinct and paid the price. They look at you, believing you are still the one who listens too much, softens too easily, and gives others the benefit of the doubt. They are used to you entering rooms with an open heart, believing everyone is as sincere as you. And because they are used to that old version, they think you will not notice the mask slipping piece by piece from their faces. But this time is different. You remain silent, yet your silence is no longer patience. It is observation. It is the way you gather every fragment without probing or doubting. Every movement, every word, every small shift steps into its own spotlight. You do not need to force anything. When someone has something to hide, they reveal themselves first. You realize something important. You have grown without announcing it. Your growth did not arrive through declarations. It arrived through nights you sat alone in the dark, facing pain no one saw. It arrived through the days you learned to stand on your own, without anyone holding your hand. It arrived through the quiet rebuilding of your foundation, in the moments no one believed you were creating anything. And because your change happened silently, people assume they can still predict you. They assume you still react the same, still fear hurt the same, still soften the same, but what they do not know is this. You have become someone truth reaches more easily than lies. Your sensitivity is no longer a weakness for them to use. It has become an inner compass that points straight to what the human eye cannot see. There is a moment you almost laugh inside, not out of joy, but because you realize you are standing in a completely different version of yourself. In the past, you would feel confused, try to dismiss the discomfort, convince yourself that everyone meant well. In the past, you would blame yourself for being too sensitive, thinking you were imagining things. But now you stand firm, looking directly at these signals, and you do not deny what you feel. You start remembering old lessons, the time you trusted someone who only liked you when you could serve their needs, the time you gave someone a 10th chance when they were not worthy of the first, the time you stayed silent to keep the peace, but paid with cracks inside your own soul. Those memories no longer hurt. They only remind you that today's intuition is not a baseless warning. It is lived experience distilled into wisdom. You look at the faces smiling at you, And for the first time, you do not see the mask. You see the hand behind the mask. You see the rush when their performance slips. You see the worry in their eyes when you stay silent for a few seconds too long. You see the tension in their smile when they realize you are not as easily swayed as before. You do not know what their plan is, but you know there is one. You sense a web being woven around you, not with ropes, but with intentions. And that web is not refined enough to escape the awareness of your soul. Yet you are not afraid, not because you are stronger than they are, but because you are stronger than the person you were yesterday. And as long as that remains true, no trap can make you fall. They think you do not see it, but you have seen everything. You do not leave the room immediately. You let your eyes move around, not to look for more evidence, but to confirm what you feel inside. The strange thing is that the more you observe, the more clearly you see the awkwardness hiding behind actions that seem natural. Someone tries to act overly relaxed. Someone avoids eye contact. Someone clings to an unimportant story just to stop the silence from falling. You realize they are the ones afraid of that silence, because your silence does not contain agreement. It contains understanding. They think you are not paying attention, but the energy running through the room is telling you everything like an open book, not through words, but through the small misalignments that only a soul once betrayed can read. You see one person glancing at another as if checking whether they are playing the role assigned to them. You see them becoming collectively kinder than usual, as if kindness could hide the scent of intent. And then you understand. They are not only underestimating you, they are overestimating their own disguise. You do not blame them. What surprises you is not their strategy, but that they believe you cannot see it. You have traveled too far on your path to force yourself to trust the surface. You understand that people rarely betray you with actions first. They betray you with energy. When something inside them changes direction, your soul is the first place to receive the signal. A part of you wants to ask directly, but the deeper part knows you do not need to. Truth does not need to be dragged out. It rises on its own when the time is right, and truth is standing very close. You only need to keep watching, not defensive, not frantic, simply calm, like someone who knows they are no longer the fragile person others remember. You recall other moments in your life when you ignored signals just like these. Days when your heart rushed to like someone, to trust someone so much that you dismissed your own intuition. Then you paid the price with tears, with the collapse of your self-respect, with nights where you had to remind yourself that you deserved better. Those experiences did not make you numb, they made you sharp. And today, that sharpness is working like an invisible sword, cutting truth away from beautiful performance. No one thinks you know more than what you speak, but that is your strength. The chosen do not need to prove intelligence. They only need to stay quiet long enough for the trap setter to reveal themselves. And that is exactly what is happening. No one points a weapon at you, yet every sentence touches you with a strange, sharp edge, not enough to hurt, but enough for you to see the distortion in their intent. You feel your body shift slightly. Your heartbeat does not rise, but your awareness lifts to another level. You stand among them but no longer belong to their energy. A separation unfolds that no one notices. They speak to you in the language of closeness, but their souls are keeping distance. And that distance is the one thing they cannot hide, no matter how hard they try. Then in a very small moment, you catch the eyes of one person in the group. Just a second. Yet the whole story rests inside it. Not regret, not sadness, but surprise. The moment they realize you are not as simple as they believed. In that look, you read two layers. The upper layer is the performance trying to smile. The lower layer is the fear that you have seen everything they want to hide. You do not nod. You do not react. You do not confirm anything. But in your mind, A door opens and you step through. It is the moment you understand you are no longer the one being led. You are leading without speaking. You show no anger or bitterness, and that calmness shifts the atmosphere. They try to keep the conversation going, but it no longer flows naturally. Their energy becomes tight, as if they were preparing something and you arrived too early. You begin to see the invisible strings connecting them. The way one person speaks and another follows. The way someone throws out a fake compliment and someone else nods at the right rhythm. The way they take turns checking your reaction. Not the actions of one person, but the arrangement of many. And you understand this did not begin today. It began earlier, quietly, in conversations you did not hear, in thoughts you could not see, in exchanged glances when you looked away. But what scares them most is this. You saw it all without anyone noticing the moment it happened. No sharp breath, no accusing look, no visible change on your face. You realized everything without leaving your state of peace. You stand there, fully aware you are in the middle of a scripted play, yet more awake than any actor on the stage. And because of that awareness, you have time to choose your response. You do not run, you do not fight. You let them perform, because you know you are not drawn into their story. You are writing your own story right here, in the silence that makes them uneasy. You understand a new chapter is forming. Not the chapter you hoped for, but the one you have been prepared for all along. And even though you have not spoken a word, everything around you has already begun to change. You are still standing among them, but the feeling is entirely different. Not because they have changed in any dramatic way, but because you have already seen the invisible structure behind every action. What keeps you calm is not confidence, but the awareness that sometimes truth needs room to grow fully before it steps into the light. You know well that if you expose it too early, the story will twist, and those who are directing the play will quickly turn the truth into a weapon against you. So you let everything continue, without resisting, without interrupting, without tangling the threads they have woven. Many people think strength lies in quick reactions, in cutting off danger the moment it appears. But you have learned something different. Sometimes you must let people walk the entire path they have chosen, until there is no reason left for them to escape responsibility for what they have done. You know well that those who run from their own behavior always search for an excuse to deny it. You also know that if you interrupt their plan too soon, the whole story will be twisted to make you look impulsive or overly sensitive. That is exactly what they expect. And you, through your quietness, have refused to give them that chance. You begin noticing the coordination within the group, the way they exchange glances when they think you are not looking, the way one asks a question and another gently adds on to shape the meaning, the way their voices settle into the same tone as if they agreed beforehand on how to approach you. None of this reveals itself because they are clumsy, but because they believe you are not perceptive enough to see it. What they do not know is that you have lived through situations far more complicated than this. You have been fooled by people more intelligent, more polished, and more skilled at hiding. The scars in your heart taught you how to read what ordinary eyes cannot. Motives. When you stay silent, the room grows even more restless, in a way they cannot control. They keep probing you with implied questions, fake compliments, stories about others to test your reactions, but you do not answer according to their expectations. Your steadiness confuses them, as if they have thrown a stone into a lake, yet the surface remains calm. They do not understand that this calmness is not numbness, it is intention. You are letting them reveal themselves without much effort. There is a moment when you see something clearly. The ones who believe they control the story are the ones most trapped in the performance. They are so busy acting that they forget you are watching them, as if looking into clear water where every small movement becomes visible. You do not need every detail of their plan. You only need to see the direction of their hearts. And that direction is becoming more obvious even as they try to appear natural. You realize what worries them most is not that you discovered the plan, but that you are not reacting the way they want. They hope you will feel jealous, confused, angry, or eager to explain yourself. If you did, they could twist the narrative and paint you as unstable, difficult, or overly emotional, but you do not give them a single patch of ground to plant those seeds. You stand firm, quiet, watching them slip on the stage they built. Your silence begins to shift the atmosphere. Those who were confident suddenly lose rhythm. Their prepared lines turn awkward. Some smiles start to warp. Some sentences repeat because they are unsure which one to use. Their eyes scan your face for a clue, but all they find is a calmness that unsettles them. You do nothing, but that very not doing has become a mirror, causing everything they want to hide to surface on its own. You let them continue, because you know each action they add becomes evidence against themselves, not against you. Every artificial word they cling to leaves a trace they cannot erase. Every visible coordination becomes a thread leading back to the entire plan. In that stillness, you begin to see something deeper. This is not only a story about betrayal, this is a story about growth. You are no longer someone who panics before uncertain signals. You are no longer guided by the need to be loved or accepted. You are strong enough to stand alone in a crowded room without feeling lonely. You are strong enough to understand that real peace does not come from how others treat you, but from knowing your worth and realizing nothing can shake it. And in the moment you understand this, you recognize something else. Perhaps someone listening to this has also stood in a room like yours, sensing a shift in the air without knowing what to call it. If they are here, listening to every word, then maybe this is the moment they should share what they once felt, once intuited, once discovered before the truth surfaced. They do not need to say much. Just a single line is enough for them to know they are not the only one who sees what others hope no one sees. And if they want to walk with you through this journey, a journey that does not avoid truth, yet does not create noise, they can stay in this space, allowing each next part to open a new door to the clarity they deserve. You remain still in that same room, but the story has changed hands. It is no longer them directing you. You are the one guiding the rhythm of truth, through a silence they do not know how to face. No one in that room knows they are speaking to a version of you they lost sight of long ago. They look at you and believe they are facing the person who used to be soft, who used to fear losing someone so much that you made yourself small, who used to ignore warnings just to keep the peace. They think that if they build a trap based on your old patterns, you will step exactly where they need you to. But what they do not know is that you have grown in silence, grown in moments no one witnessed, grown in the way a soul grows only after it has touched the bottom and learned to rise with its own breath. It is fascinating how people assume you stayed the same simply because you never announced your change. But real transformation never needs to be declared. It shows in calmer eyes, in deeper breaths, in your detachment from the expectations of others, in the way you stand alone without feeling lonely. You do not shout that you are different. You simply live differently. And living differently long enough has turned your soul into a place where old tactics no longer find a way in. They target that old version of you. They build plans on the things that once broke you. Fake compliments, sudden closeness, warm-sounding promises that mean nothing. They reuse the tricks that once made you open your heart too quickly or stay silent too long. But they do not know that today your silence is not fear. It is discernment. You do not speak much because you no longer need to explain yourself. You do not open your heart quickly because it has been reshaped to know the difference between sincerity and traps. Along the way, there are things they say and do that make you quietly realize they cannot read your new rhythm. They are interacting with the person you used to be, while you are standing there with a heart rebuilt from the inside. This difference in frequency makes their plan ineffective before it even begins, because no one can manipulate a soul that has released the emotional dependency that once held it down. You remember exactly when you changed, even though you never told anyone. You remember the long nights spent in silence examining yourself, seeing the broken places you once tried to hide. You remember the mornings you rose with a heavy heart, yet kept walking. You remember the first time you stopped hoping someone would save you because you understood some seasons can only be healed when you face them alone. And these moments, the ones that rebuilt you, are things the people in front of you know nothing about. They think you are still bound to your old fears, but those fears have been replaced with awareness, with clarity, with a peace you never had before. As that thought crosses your mind, a quiet verse returns like a breath you once heard in your darkest days. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? Isaiah 43:19. Not a verse to preach to you, but one that reminds you your transformation was not meaningless. It is proof that your life has entered a season where plans built on deceit can no longer reach you. You stand there, and the verse is not for pride, but to remind you that the new thing God is doing in you does not arrive with celebration. It arrives in quiet moments like this. No one sees it. No one praises it. No one acknowledges it. But in that silence, you are becoming someone a trap setter cannot predict. You begin to notice the change in the way they look at you, not respect, but surprise mixed with unease. They expect familiar reactions, self-blame, softness, eagerness to please, or emotional confusion, but you do not follow any of the patterns they prepared for you. That alone shakes them. Their plan was built on prediction, and their prediction was wrong from the start. Someone tries to pull you back into your old self with a familiar promise. You smile lightly, not rejecting, but not accepting either. Another tries to control the conversation, hoping you will swallow your discomfort to keep the peace. You let them speak, but you do not let them steer your emotions. The old soundtrack no longer controls the rhythm of your new heart. They begin to feel something like an invisible wall between you and them, but that wall is not coldness. It is a boundary. For the first time, you have a real boundary, not the type you pretend to set then break because you fear losing someone, but a boundary formed from understanding, built from the price your heart has already paid. As they keep talking, every word exposes how little they know you now. They think you do not see the trap, but you are letting them walk deeper into their own plans so it reveals itself. They think you are passive, but the truth is, you are choosing the timing. They think you have not changed, but you have changed so much that the trap designed for your old self no longer fits you. Your silence today is not withdrawal, it is readiness. You stand there, needing no proof for them, only honesty with yourself. And in the deepest part of your soul, you understand that what you are witnessing is not deception. It is the test of your new self, and that new self is standing strong. You do not hurry to step out of that circle of conversation, not because you want to hear more, but because you are watching something deeper, the way they use fragments of your own memories as weapons. They do it so subtly that if you were still your old self, you would feel as if you had been pulled back into the most wounded moments of your life. But today you see everything through eyes sharpened by healing. And because of that, their plan becomes almost too obvious. They bring up things you once shared long ago, things you said when your heart was tired, fears you whispered because you believed they were safe people. They do not mention them directly, but weave them into stories and comments that seem casual. Each sentence is like a string meant to pull you back into old emotions. Being abandoned, not enough, always needing to try harder. They think that touching those points will make you react the way you used to. They believe your pain never fully healed. But they do not know that the places that once made you tremble have become new skin, not hardened skin, but healed skin. You hear them speak, and instead of shrinking, you simply see more clearly how they are trying to exploit what they assume still hurts. They do not know. You walked a long road of healing they never saw. They did not see the nights you sat alone facing the fear of being left behind. They did not see the moment you realized you had tied your worth to the acceptance of others. They did not see the journey of rising again, not out of pride, but out of truth. And while they unknowingly try to turn those wounds into leverage, something soft but powerful appears in your heart: compassion. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18 does not return to remind you of pain, but to remind you that you no longer live under its control. It arrives not with heaviness, but with the gentle breeze that once held you through nights you thought you would not survive. And as that verse moves through your mind, you realize they are fighting your memories while you are standing firmly in your present. You no longer need an apology to move forward. You no longer need someone to value you so you can believe you matter. You have outgrown the stage where you must explain why you are the way you are. And because of that, the words meant to pull you down now echo like sounds from a room you emptied long ago. Something strange happens in the atmosphere. As they try to touch your pain, they accidentally reveal their own fear. They fear your new self. They fear your peace. They fear your silence that cannot be controlled. They fear that you no longer hurt when they want you to. You see it in their eyes, in the urgency with which they watch to see if you will collapse, in the way they study your reaction more than the conversation itself. You understand that what unsettles them is not your past. What unsettles them is that you have outgrown it. You begin to see more clearly what is happening beneath the surface. They do not simply want you weaker, they want you weak in familiar ways. They want control by pulling you back into old emotions. Because your old self forgave too quickly, trusted too soon, blamed yourself too easily. But when they try to recreate that version of you, they only prove that they do not see you as you are now. They are talking to a ghost, not to you. That awareness frees you quietly. You do not need to react. You do not need to prove you have changed. The strength within you is proof enough. When they bring up things that once hurt you, you simply nod, not avoiding, not resisting. Not because you force yourself to be strong, but because you truly are no longer there. For a moment, someone lowers their voice, as if trying one final trick. They tell a story that would have made your old self burst into tears. But the tears do not come, not because you are numb, but because you understand something fully now. People can only use what still holds you. When the attachment breaks, the leverage disappears. They notice the change, not through what you say, but through what you do not say. Through how you do not get pulled into emotional games. Through how you do not try to prove or defend yourself. Through how you hold your calm without effort. Their plan begins to crumble in that moment. They look at one another more often, as if searching for a new strategy. But it is too late. Once your soul steps out of someone's influence, no one can pull you back. They keep speaking, but their words can no longer reach you. You stand there like someone observing a play you have no desire to perform in. You do not despise them. You do not feel anger. You simply see clearly. And that clarity is exactly what they never prepared for. Healing has not made you hard. It has made you unafraid of truth. And when you are unafraid of truth, no one can use deception to control you. You stand firm, and that steadiness shakes them. Not because you threaten them, but because they finally realize the trap they built no longer fits the person standing before them. You have grown beyond your old pain, and they have never grown beyond their old tricks. You begin to realize they are not acting from personal emotion alone. There is something in the way they move together that tells you this is not spontaneous behavior. It aligns too precisely, too consistently, too seamlessly across multiple people to be coincidence. Each person appears at the right moment. Each line arrives at the right time. Each tone of laughter, each exchanged glance carries a rhythm you cannot ignore. As if there is a script they are all reading in silence. But you are not simply looking at them. You are looking through them, because your soul has grown enough to understand that some battles do not take place on the ground. Some intentions do not begin in the human heart, but in the fractures of the spirit, where desire, jealousy, insecurity, and unhealed places become doors for darkness to slip through. You stand there in your own stillness, hearing the sound of orchestration that only intuition can detect. Not the sound of people, but the sense of another hand, unseen yet present, silent yet steering. You do not fear it. You simply understand more deeply that this is no longer just a matter between you and them. This is a matter of light and shadow, where everyone becomes a vessel for forces they do not fully comprehend. And in that moment, Ephesians 6:12 returns to your mind like an explanation that needs no wording. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers in the heavenly places. You do not process the verse with your mind. It simply lands as truth. Your soul recognizes while standing in that room full of performances. People think they are in control of the plan, but often they do not even know why they act the way they do. They become extensions of forces they cannot name. You keep watching them and you begin to notice familiar traces. The long-standing jealousy, the eyes that dimmed whenever you were loved, the moments they stayed quiet not because they had nothing to say, but because they were studying where you might break. Their sudden care was never affection, but proximity to observe the crack they hoped would appear. These actions, each one, are not the source, they are symptoms. The deeper source lies in what they refuse to face within themselves, the feeling of not enough, the sense of being threatened by someone else's light, the need to control to compensate for inner instability. And when those emotions merge, they become an invisible hand pushing them to act in ways they think are their own, but are in truth driven by another energy. You observe without judgment, not because you think you are above them, but because you know that without healing, you too could have been swept into those dark currents. Anyone who has not understood their worth can be pulled into controlling others. Anyone who has not faced their own pain can be tempted to create pain in others just to feel less empty. You look at them, and you see their wounds unbandaged. You see fears they have never spoken aloud. You see fragility hidden behind borrowed confidence. But understanding does not mean you allow them to step into your light. You stand there like someone watching a web woven from the unhealed parts of many souls. And you realize you cannot break that web by confronting it. Those who are being moved cannot yet see they are being moved. Those stirred by darkness always believe they are acting righteously. And if you try to stop them, they will only sink deeper into the role they think is truth. So you do not speak. You do not justify. You let them fall into their own rhythm while you withdraw your spirit from their grasp, not because you are fleeing the battle, but because you know this is not a battleground for words. This is a battleground for discernment, for clarity, for steadiness. The moment you step back internally, the atmosphere shifts, not because you changed anything outwardly, but because you just reclaimed the power they believed they had. Your energy is no longer in their net. They can no longer manipulate your reactions, no longer read your emotions, no longer predict your next step. They try once more, a subtle remark, an insincere question, a strained smile, but nothing reaches you. They sense this shift. They cannot explain it, but they feel it, and it unsettles them, because they need you weak for their plan to be strong, but you are not weak. Not because you try to be strong, but because you have grown beyond the height their hands can reach. You begin to see their role clearly in this story. They are not just deceivers, they are tests. They are not just those who corner you. They are the doorway to deeper growth. They are not merely trap setters. They are mirrors of what you have already outgrown. They think you are the target, but truly, you are the one being equipped to see beyond what human eyes can perceive. None of them knows that what unsettles them is not your action, but your peace. None of them knows you stepped out of their influence before you ever step out of the room. And none of them knows the battle was over the moment you understood they were not the enemy. They were instruments. You remain still, and that stillness alone shakes the entire plan they believed was flawless. The air around you begins to shift in a way only awakened souls can sense. The confusion of vague words and exchanged glances fades. Now you can hear the heartbeat of truth gathering itself, little by little. Like still water about to be touched by wind, they keep performing their roles, keep arranging, keep checking to see where you lean. But the more they try, the more they reveal. Because someone who tries to control a story can never stay natural for long. You no longer focus on every detail. You do not need to. When your heart stands in true stillness, all that is false rises to the surface like foam on water. You only need to stand there, breathe slowly, observe with clarity you did not have to force. It simply is, as if your soul has stepped into a higher place where hidden things cannot survive long. Someone smiles, but the smile tilts. Someone speaks, but their story lacks structure. Another pauses too long, as if waiting for a signal. All of it points to one truth. They are no longer performing for you. They are performing for one another, checking that everyone is still holding the script. Instead of an attack, the scene before you looks like a group trying to keep up masks that have grown too heavy. You see it, and you no longer feel surprised, only relieved. Not relieved because everything is clear, but because you recognize you are strong enough to see without hurting. That is the first sign you have stepped out of your old wound. In the past, sights like this would have shaken you, would have made you question your worth. But today, you see them like old mirrors falling from the wall, not to blame, but to confirm you no longer live there. And in that still moment, a familiar line rises inside you. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. It does not come to pull you out of the battle. It comes to remind you your stillness is not avoidance. It is strength. It is the place you are meant to stand, so you can see clearly what noise would hide. It is the affirmation that you do not need to react instinctively. You are allowed to stand still, and everything will reveal itself. You look around and realize people rarely withstand the stillness of a strong soul. When you do not react, they begin reacting for you. When you do not panic, they begin to panic. When you do not rush, they begin stumbling over their own urgency. One person speaks too much, revealing what they meant to hide. Another corrects their own words too quickly, leaving traces of the setup behind. Someone changes expression the moment you merely tilt your head. They thought they were circling you, but they are tightening the rope around themselves. You do not need to set a trap. Your silence is the trap, not to catch them, but to expose what they try to keep unseen. And with each passing minute, You feel it clearly. They are afraid, not afraid of you, afraid that they cannot read you anymore. Your change has taken their control away. They cannot predict, cannot manipulate, cannot shape the story around your reaction. You know this, but you take no pleasure in it. You are not satisfied by their discomfort. You only feel the natural separation taking place. When light grows, darkness loses its hold. When you stand still, everything untrue must find its way out, not because you reject it, but because it cannot survive in the new light you carry. Someone tries to regain control. They shift their tone, trying to make you feel you need them. They tell a story that the old you would have rushed to soothe, to comfort, to rescue, but you do not step into that old circle. You listen, but you do not merge. You are present, but you are not pulled. Your calmness frightens them in a very real way. Then you see something else. They do not truly want you hurt. Not really. What they want is the version of you that could be controlled. The version that needed them. The version so tender it reacted exactly how they hoped. Because if you stand as you do now, they have no place in your story. And for souls that have never stood on their own, loss of control feels like loss of identity. You watch this and understand, this is not a battle of right and wrong. It is a battle between your old self and your new self. They are not fighting you. They are fighting the growth you have reached. But they cannot win because they are striking at a space that no longer exists. They are using weapons designed for someone you no longer are. You do not need to remind them of this. The conversation is already reminding them. The nervousness in their eyes is reminding them. The tired edges of their laughter are reminding them. Because when you grow, those who try to keep you in an old version of yourself are the ones who struggle to breathe. No one says it aloud, but you feel it clearly. They know you see through them. And what terrifies them more than your clarity is the fact that you are not angry, not arguing, not explaining, not shaken. Your peace is a mirror that makes their performance heavy and out of place. You stand there still, yet you fill the entire room in a way you never have before, not with noise, but with the weight of a soul that knows where it belongs. You do not rush to leave. You do not rush to confront. You simply let everything false drift away like old dust touched by light. There is a very subtle moment, so subtle that if you were not standing in that stillness, you would have missed it. It is not a moment when someone says something harsh. It is not when a laugh slips out of place. It is the moment when the atmosphere shifts, as if the truth has taken one more step toward you. It is not loud, not shocking, but it is so clear that you feel it touch your bones, a kind of clarity that cannot be reversed. In that exact moment, you see them trying to change the direction of the conversation. They begin to twist everything they planted earlier, as if wanting to make you feel you imagined it, that there was no orchestration, that everything results from you being too sensitive. Someone laughs louder than usual, pretending warmth. Another says something that sounds like defending you, but the tone makes you question whether it is protection or simply the last coat of paint they are applying over a cracked wall. They want the truth to blur. They want you to waver. They want you to doubt your own perception. You see that immediately, not because they are clumsy, but because you have stood in truth too long to be dragged back into fog. Fog is where your old self lived, but not where you stand now. Those who are trying to bend the story do not understand that once the soul has seen something clearly, it cannot unsee it. You sense this in every word they speak, hesitant, strained, as if they are trying to rescue a collapsing performance. They try to distract from the signs already exposed, but that effort only makes everything clearer. A justification offered too quickly, an explanation no one asked for, a repeated reassurance. Each thing is a loose thread pulling the whole fabric apart. You stay still, You do not argue, you do not nod, you simply watch. And that watching, that calmness, makes them scramble even more. That is when a line from Proverbs flashes through your mind like a flame illuminating the present. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment. Proverbs 12:19. You do not speak the verse aloud. It flows through you as confirmation that truth does not need you to protect it. It stands on its own. Deception survives only when someone fears it, believes it, or is bound by it. But you no longer belong to any of those. You are not afraid. You do not doubt yourself. And you no longer stand in the shadows where lies can breathe. The more they try to cover it, the clearer the truth becomes. You begin to see cracks in their coordination. One person says something, another corrects it. Someone denies what the previous person implied. Someone acts too surprised by information they should have known if everything were natural. Their movements are no longer synchronized, as if parts of the script have burned away and each of them is guessing the missing lines. You feel their panic not in their words, but in the spaces between their words. The space where they fear your silence will swallow everything they're trying to hold together. And they are right, because your silence is not just peace, it is a mirror. You are surprised to realize you feel no sense of victory. There is no joy in watching people stumble over the net of lies they wove. What you feel is the gentleness of a soul that has traveled far enough not to be swallowed by chaos. This kind of growth does not arrive with cheering. It arrives with release, with the understanding that you do not need to break anyone's mask. Masks fall off when the actors grow tired. Someone in the group attempts to reach you with a familiar line, the kind they once used to pull you into empathy. But this time, you hear it with a different ear. It has no weight, no effect. It no longer reaches you the way they hope. You answer with a small smile, and that smile makes them falter, as if they just realize the moment is no longer in their hands. You begin to understand why this journey has unfolded in the order it has. Only when you stand in clarity do you stop reacting from old wounds. Only when you no longer look for agreement do you avoid being dragged into stories that are not yours. And only when you are still in the true sense of inner stillness, rest and steadiness, do you see what others do not want you to see. Another realization rises. They are afraid, not because they are about to be exposed, but because they no longer have the power to define you. They no longer have the power to move your emotions. They no longer have the power to use your pain as leverage. You have stepped outside their reach. And for souls who have never stood on their own, that loss of control is more frightening than any truth. Truth does not shout. It does not need to win. It only needs to stand still. And when you stand still with truth, without trembling, without wavering, without clinging to anyone to validate you, everything untrue falls away like old leaves. You feel this shift in the air, as if a curtain is rising, not to reveal them, but to reveal you, your new self. The one who does not run from truth and does not need to force it. The one who is no longer driven by fear of losing anything. The one who stands in honesty without fearing who might walk away. You look at them, they look at you, but now those two gazes no longer stand on the same ground. Truth has changed its position, and you have changed your position with it. You feel the exact moment when truth shifts, not through an explosion or a dramatic gesture, but through a movement as soft as wind touching still water. The atmosphere changes in a way only souls that have learned to stand still can perceive. The eyes that once watched you with confidence now begin to turn away, not because they look down on you, but because they realize they misjudged you from the start. You stand among them like someone who has stepped out of an old garment they still assumed you wore, and that alone makes them recoil, because they no longer know how to manipulate someone who no longer reacts according to their predictions. They try to throw at you the old lines that once made you doubt yourself, guilt-shaping comments. Questions like, "Are you being too sensitive?" Or "Maybe you misunderstood." The same phrases that once pushed you to explain, defend, chase after clarity. But this time they slide off you like water over stone. You do not resist their words, yet you do not let them reach the deep places of you anymore. You hear them, you understand them, but you do not let your emotions be pushed in the direction they want. And this is what frightens them. Your old soft spots have vanished, leaving nothing for their hands to hold. Someone smiles, but the smile hangs heavy, like they are trying to keep a door from splitting off its hinges. Another switches the subject too quickly, trying to blur what just leaked out in their voice. Someone stands farther away to avoid your eyes, as if looking at you would expose what they are trying to hide. They do not realize that the very rush to cover themselves reveals more than any confession. You do not speak, but your silence makes everything clearer, because false confidence only works when they believe you see nothing. As you remain in your stillness, something gentle yet weighty settles over you, a covering that does not come from people or circumstance. You did not ask for it. You did not reach for it. But it surrounds you with a steadiness no word spoken against you can break. And in that moment, Psalm 91:4 rises from deep within you. He will cover you with his feathers, and his faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. It is not comfort, it is confirmation, because you know this peace does not come from your own strength. Something greater is lifting you, placing you where fear, confusion, and manipulation cannot reach. You look at them not with accusation, but with understanding, the understanding of someone who has walked through enough pain to know not every person who wounds you is evil. Some simply do not know how to face the dark within themselves. They do not oppose you because they hate you. They oppose you because you reflect the parts of themselves they are not ready to confront. Your light does not offend them, but it exposes what they try to hide. And when an unhealed soul stands before a healing one, fear always arrives before understanding. As they keep shifting the story, their uneasiness grows clearer. They are no longer aligned the way they were at first. One says something, another adjusts it. One denies what someone just affirmed. Small inconsistencies appear like threads running through cloth that is coming apart. You do not need to expose anything. They unravel themselves. Every word, every glance, every forced smile becomes a silent confession. And slowly, they realize you have seen more than you reveal. But what frightens them most is not that you know the truth. What frightens them is that you know it without anger. You know it without retaliation. You know it without panic. You know it and remain in peace. Because peace cannot be controlled. Peace cannot be cornered. Peace does not cling to anyone to survive. Peace is the clearest sign that a soul has risen beyond their reach. And when they cannot move your emotions, they lose the only weapon they thought they had. You stand still, yet your presence fills the entire space, not with dominance, but with truth. Truth stands still. They do not. Truth does not intimidate, but it makes every false word heavier. You are not destabilizing them. You are simply standing where you belong, and that alone makes them tremble. They are used to living in the fog where everything can be twisted through speech. But you are not in the fog anymore. You are in the light. And light does not argue with darkness. It simply causes darkness to retreat. You recognize something important. You are no longer standing inside the room they created. They are standing inside the truth. You carry a truth they cannot steer, cannot dodge, cannot distort. And that truth is not an accusation. That truth is you, the rebuilt, peaceful, steady you, who is no longer governed by fear of being misunderstood or abandoned. the you that no tactic can pierce anymore. You do not need to walk away to end this chapter. The chapter ends the moment you understand they no longer hold any power in your life. They did not lose because you defeated them. They lost because you are no longer the person their strategies were designed for. You have stepped into another territory wider, brighter, deeper, and once you stand there, the souls who do not walk in truth naturally fall back. And you know, gently but surely, you have already passed the test. There is a moment in a spiritual journey when everything stops revolving around what people do to you and begins revolving around how God rewrites the story just when they believe they have locked in the ending. You feel that moment not with your eyes, but with a shift deep within your soul, as if the ground beneath you opens into a path that did not exist before. They think they know your ending, think they are directing a final scene where you fall, break, or at least struggle to prove your innocence. But the moment they are most confident is the moment you realize the story was never in their hands and has never been. Your silence when they wait for your reaction is the first step that knocks their script out of place. Then comes your peace, your calm, your refusal to panic, and suddenly the structure of their plan starts to crack. They try to hold it together, they try to reinforce the lines they rehearsed, but the more they try, the more it becomes clear that what they built cannot stand. Even they feel truth slipping through every gap like light entering a room with no door. In this movement, you realize you are not just escaping a trap. You are stepping out of an old version of your life, a version where you let others decide your worth, where storms on the outside shaped your faith on the inside. Now you are not standing as someone defending yourself. You are standing as someone upheld, and a verse rises in your spirit, not to teach you, but to confirm what you are seeing unfold. This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes. Psalm 118:23. Marvelous not because you defeated them, marvelous not because truth finally leaned your way, marvelous because you did not collapse the way they expected. And that alone makes the verse come alive, because you know, with certainty, you did not carry yourself through this moment by your own strength. A quiet but decisive intervention overturned every scene they tried to write for you. You stand there feeling a strange kind of freedom, not freedom because they changed, but because you did. They try using familiar tricks to pull you back into your old self. Lines from the past, gentle tones meant to control, phrases designed to make you feel responsible or indebted. But those hooks no longer find anything to cling to in you. You do not resent them. You simply are no longer on the level where those hooks can reach. And in that soft but unmistakable moment, you feel them step back, not with their feet, but in spirit, as if their souls recognize they cannot enter this space of light using the tools they once relied on. Some are confused, unsure what just happened. Some grow quiet, waiting to see if you will return to the version of yourself they were prepared for. But you know you will not because of pride, but because maturity has no way backward. You feel God's intervention not through dramatic signs, but through the changes in you that no one can manipulate. Your confidence no longer depends on their approval. Your peace no longer depends on false harmony. Your boundaries no longer rise from fear of abandonment, but from honor for your own soul. This is how God rewrites a story. He does not always remove the opposition. He transforms you until the opposition can no longer touch you. Slowly, you realize that the people who once studied your weaknesses are now unsettled because they can no longer read you. They see you different, quietly different, deeply different. The kind of different that makes them wonder whether you know more than you let on. And you do. You see them more clearly than they see themselves, not because you are clever, but because the light in you is too strong for darkness to hide within it. While they scramble to rebuild their illusion of control, you stand like someone who has walked through a storm without being knocked down. What you understand now is not about who is right or wrong, but the lesson of separation. Not everyone who walks with you is meant to walk to the end. Not everyone once close is meant to hold a place in the next chapter. Some people are only allowed to accompany you this far so that you can see yourself clearly, and then they stop, and you no longer hold on to them. You feel with great clarity that you have been pushed into a new chapter, not by a dramatic event, but by inner wholeness. The things they once used to hurt you have become the things that make you strong. The words that once left you breathless now glide through your mind without weight. The traps that once confused you now serve as evidence that God has led you out of the old territory. The reversal did not come from exposing them. It came from realizing you no longer need to expose anyone. Truth stands still. Truth is strong enough to reveal everything on its own. And the only thing you must do is remain where you belong, where chaos cannot pull you, where others cannot define your identity, where you no longer pay for peace with relationships that cannot hold truth. You now understand that real victory is not when others admit they were wrong, but when your heart is no longer chained to what they did. When you walk through darkness without carrying it inside you, when you can look back and know your heart stayed clean, your voice stayed honest, and your soul stayed whole. It is marvelous indeed, not because they failed, but because you did not sink the way they expected. And in that peace, you feel Psalm 118:23 more vividly than ever, not as a phrase, but as something alive within you. This reversal is the Lord's doing, and it is beautiful beyond denial. You breathe slowly. You have not conquered anyone. You are simply standing in your own light, and that light ends the story in a way none of them ever planned.
Grateful that you chose to spend these moments in the light of this story. If it touched your soul, please like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell so the next whisper of light may find its way back to you.